Good evening, everyone. Thank you for staying with us late evening, and we are so happy to be with you. When I got the invitation, I was really hungry to meet so many people who are having the same background and sharing the same insight that bringing people to nature and to support the outdoor education and outdoor activities is key to our life, key to our future. And it's said that we can't meet person to person, but at the other hand, we are so lucky because of this online meeting. We can have our inspiring chair, Southey, with us, and he could join us. And I'm really looking forward to co-chair this meeting in the next couple of 1.5 hours. Before we start, I would like to give the words back to Gronya to introduce the first activity, because in the webinar it's very difficult. It's not easy to talk to everyone and to learn who you are. We will introduce ourselves, and we were introduced very nicely. Thank you for that. But we would like to know whom we are talking to and who are with us. So please follow the activity that Gronya will explain.
So this is the Mentimeter word cloud activity, Katalin, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
The first one. The first one.
The first one we have, I'm going to embed a link in the chat box here next to you, and it's just a question asking you, what does being in nature mean to you? And I would like you to, or Katalin would like you to give 3 responses to that, and it will just build a word cloud, which we'll share with everyone at the end. So I'm just putting the link in now.
And please type the first 3 words that come to your mind.
The first 3 words that come to your mind when you think of being in nature and what it means to you.
Thank you.
Let me see.
And next.
So if you follow that link that I just put into the chat box, that will bring you straight to an application called Mentimeter, and you can put in your 3 words there, and that will build a word cloud for us that we can display at the end.
I'm so excited to see the results and how this online working and cooperation work. Okay. So while you are doing, let me to explain why I chose the title of the presentation. 35 years ago, we established a nomadic camp system in Hungary. You can see some pictures on the screen. Our aim was to go out with ourselves and with some children for 10 days without any built infrastructure. We built our kitchen, we brought our tents, and just to be there, just to enjoy, just to see what's going around, what is around us, to feel the power of nature, to be touched by different plants or animals or the places, to learn how to take care about and how does it work, how the processes are work, and to live with nature. And it worked really well. We loved it. And now many people are going back based on these camps. Fantastic young generation grown up. Now they are leading the education center we established. They are continuing, the camp still going on. Every year they go and they renewing the traditions, but it's almost similar. But what happened from that? Of 20 years ago, so it means 25 years after we started these camps, I was happy to work for the government, and we started to establish the system countrywide. We called it as a forest school system, and it was about having every kid to be in nature at least 5 days during their school term. It's an amazing initiative. We really loved it. And the school signed up, the teacher brought their kids there, and it worked and still working. And we got very, very good feedback, but several times we got another feedback. Once in a camp, in this forest school activities, the teacher organized cleaning a creek, or not cleaning, it's measuring the cleanness of a creek activity. That means you have to go there, take a sample of water to see who lives it, what is the smell of it, what is the color of it, if there is any color, blah, blah. And when they started to bring the class down to the valley, to the creek, the teacher stopped, was so nervous and said, "You haven't mentioned that there is mud." And we couldn't get the kids come down. And it was strange because that teacher refused the activity. And we were thinking what happened. And probably that teacher never ever been out. And he was frustrated. He didn't feel home there. And this momentum really gives me the courage and passion to work on bringing people to nature and supporting all of the activities that helps him. So this is my story, why I'm here and why I'm working on different levels, supporting nature for all. And now the word is over to you, Sean. What is your story? Why are you with us?
So here I live in New York City, so it's just after just about 2:30 here in the afternoon. I imagine most of you are in your evening. It's the heat of the day here, so if I look a tiny bit warm, it's because it's warm. Can you hear me, everyone? Someone wave your hands if you can hear me. There we go. Thank you. My name is Sean. I'm a Canadian and a South African based here. I've been running environmental campaigns for a long time. I've run online campaigns, I've run radio dramas, theater, a plethora of different types of work. But what we're going to share with you today is my favorite campaign. And it's my favorite campaign because I think it speaks to something that each of you know. That when you love something, you care about that thing. When you care about that thing, you act for that thing, whether it's through money, voting, shopping, you take care. And really, we want to explore with you today the power of caring. We will ask you a little while later when you fell in love with nature. So I want you to start thinking about when you fell in love with nature. You heard from Katalin, who I love working with, her beautiful story about 35 years ago, how she created an environment that helped thousands of children fall in love. My story is simple. I was living in Vancouver. My dad was a professor. Back when I'm over 50, so our parents used to throw us out of the house at 7 in the morning and not want us back until it was dark. There was no worry about a pedophile. There was no worry about tetanus. There was no worry about COVID. We were just launched into the world to explore in the wild the wonders that are around us. In an urban environment, semi-urban, it doesn't matter. The world is replete in wildness. For me, my nature moment was building dams in the local pond. It was not a protected area. It was nothing special. It was just a little creek. But for me, it was a mountainscape with cascading water, and we would build little dams out of sticks and rocks, and we would allow polywogs and little fish to gather, and we could spend hundreds of hours in a week building these online palaces, these in-person palaces. And it made me realize that that was my special moment. My place where I connected to my local community. And throughout my whole career now, I have invested in environment. It's something that drives me and motivates me, but I often reflect, if there had not been that pond near where I was. If there had not been those tiny little fish, if my parents had not embraced my celebration of the wild, would I have gone into something different? We want to explore with you today as practitioners and lovers of environment and appreciative inquiry voices on the power of local, what it is to create those moments for everybody. Let me first invite you. I don't know how many of you are CEC members, if any of you are. IUCN is a very special organization. It has 1,400 NGO members who care and are passionate about the environment. So from the big nature conservancies and Conservation Internationals, Parks Canada, Parks China, the big players in the world, it goes all the way down to the tiny little NGOs of 5 or 6 people who really do grassroots work around the world. So for me, it's beautiful. I also love it because it has a strong secretariat with offices in 40 countries, but it has 17,000 volunteers. Katalin and I are honored to lead the group that is interested in the power of communication, the power of education. We will put a link up later. We invite you to join us. We are trying to be stronger, bigger, more powerful in the world. We are about 1,700 committed people from 60, 70 countries around the world, at least. We would like you to join us. We're gonna, in the chat box, invite you now, if you have questions at any time, please put them in the chat box and we will come back to them and feed them. And we have a whole team here helping us identify them. So please, as questions come up, do it. I don't know if there's a hand up mechanism that you can use as well if you want to speak, but please alert us whether you want to interject at any time. We have an hour and a half together. We want to make it participatory. Over to Katalin. I think you're on mute, Katalin.
I loved your story. I grew up in something similar in a village. So the next one, we would like to introduce you to a movement, the movement called Nature for All. And but before that, we would like to start that activity that Sean was mentioned. So the next slide is for you, Sean, before we are going to dig into the Nature for All movement.
And this doesn't go on a cloud. It doesn't go anywhere difficult. All you have to do is take 2 minutes while we're explaining Nature for All to write in the chat box when you fell in love with nature. What was your aha moment? What was your heartbeat moment with nature? We will ask 3 of you later to share that story on here. So we also want to encourage you to dig deep and share, because sharing is a way for all of us to feel those powerful moments when transformation happens. So I'm looking forward to that first story in the chat box.
Okay. The next one, we would like to share a video with you. And I heard that in the Zoom, it doesn't work really well. So Gronya is going to share a link of our video. I'm going to play it, but please use it on your own computer because it's better with the sound.
We already have flying ants. I love it.
Katalin, I cannot find the link actually. Could you resend it to me and I'll put it through. But in the meantime, if everyone can think about that question and you know, start populating the chat box, that would be great.
Yeah, take a moment to reflect. And while we're getting the technology, please share your story. I'm already in love with the flying ants. It's my favorite new thing.
I think I have to stop staring to see any other things on my video. I sent it to you on the email. Okay, I can try to put to the chat box. Yeah, me myself. Where is the chat box? Where do I
want to know
find
where
it?
rock pooling is.
When I'm sharing the screen, it doesn't work. So I have to go to the chat box separate.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'm here.
I was just going to say, Sean, that you actually reminded me of, I think, how I connected with nature, that I grew up in a, and I think I was talking about this last night, I grew up in quite a suburban landscape, but it was, you know, an old-fashioned part of the city. And but the park itself, the estate that I grew up, the housing estate that I grew up, was quite new at the time in the 80s. And they used to just let the grass grow in the green centre, and all of the kids from the park would play in there and build dens, and we'd roll our bodies along to flatten down the grass. And it was really, really cool. You were hidden, you couldn't be seen by the adults. And now they cut the grass really short, and you know, they had a residents committee, and they were very well intentioned and very well meaning, but the grass is real short, and it just never was the same. I remember the year that they cut it, and we were all quite devastated as kids. And I think you know, whenever I see long grass now, I still get a bit excited by a bit of length in a meadow. So just to say that.
Thank you. I shared the link, and we are getting beautiful stories. So yeah, thank you for sharing it with us.
Everyone, it's only a 2-minute video, 2.5-minute video. So please just click it on your screen, take a minute to watch it. I'm going to start a timer now, and in 2 minutes 45, we will continue.
So we, as Sean said, we had 1,700 members. And when we prepared this video, they were so keen on translating it. So we have more than 30+ languages worldwide. So if you go to the YouTube channel, you could see all of the languages. And this is how I feel the strength of a network. And this video was seen worldwide. Back to you.
So when we created Nature for All, it was based on a very simple concept that love is transformational. Now, often in the environmental field, you're not allowed to talk about things like love. Seems way too touchy-feely, way too far from the science of climate change and the shocking loss of biodiversity we're seeing around the world. But we've been running workshops, and each workshop we started with this exercise: when did you fall in love with nature? It was my icebreaker. And I would hear amazing stories like we're seeing on the screen again and again and again. And it occurred to us that if so many of us in the environmental field had those moments, could we change the world by creating billions of those moments? Our theory of change became, if people have a chance to fall in love with nature, they will connect to nature differently. And it's kind of the long game of environment, because it will change the way you think about educating yourself. It will change the way you think about the jobs you get, and it will change the way you vote and the politicians you bring to office. So, and it allows for us to deal with the terrible problem of complexity in the environmental field. Because if you try and go behavior by behavior, challenge by challenge, problem by problem, you can never catch up. Is it pangolins or penguins? Is it the rainforest or climate change? Is it soil loss or plastics? It's all of it. And that relationship you have with nature, that love for nature, allows you to change a suite of behaviors that gives you an opportunity to make a difference over time. And so we thought, wow, that's really cool. If moments to fall in love with nature make a difference, how could we make that happen at scale? And this is where the beauty of a network of IUCN is. If it was one NGO, regardless of how beautiful, it would be impossible to do. You just can't reach around the world at the local level at scale. So we realized that we needed a true network, a true partnership. So we invited people to join Nature for All. There is no cost to join. There's no heavy rules. There's no heavy regulations. You just have to declare what you're going to do to help people fall in love with nature and agree to share your best practices. We now have over 400 organizations that have signed up. Next slide. Those organizations already know how to do it. Many of you know how to do it. Katalin has experience in parks. Others of you have experiences in running libraries, talking to kids, teaching how to work in the playground, what it is to work with a church group, what it is to work with a synagogue. It all varies. We each have our own slice. So the idea of Nature for All is, how do we surface the best practices that are already ongoing? How do we codify, share, and learn from those best practices, and then share them around the world? We also recognize that many times that environmental educator, that person who works with children or youth or new immigrants, new populations, is often deemed to be not the center of the organization. It's the fundraisers, the scientists, who often are given the power in environmental organizations. So Nature for All was also created to empower the constituency of people, that practitioners who do this work, and to let them find their peers around the world, celebrate their peers, and move forward together with these better practices and better insights. We have best practices in a written form, video form, lots of different ways to newsletter, networks, regional discussions, national discussions, different ways for those networks to manifest themselves in the 3.5 years since we've been launched. We also look to the community to share products. We have comic books out of Mexico that are in 6 languages. We have storybooks like Tara and the Magic Tree. We have how to run plastic campaigns. There are resources and tools that we make available to the constituents. For us, it's critical that you see what others are doing to be inspired to do it in your community. And often there are valuable products already created that can be used by you. Katalin?
Yep. And we who, okay, I'm not unmuted. So, and we who work in the nature, work on the field, take our boats, go out and spend time in the nature, we know very well how does it support us. But we found it so difficult to explain to those who are not connected or not connected enough, or make the decisions and probably doesn't value enough the nature or the natural resources. So we decided to make a research. So the Children and Nature Network, whom founder, some of you could met yesterday, it was Richard Louv was one of the co-founders. So we asked Children and Nature to conduct a research, and they collected together more than 120 research to see how our life benefits from nature, to collect arguments for our work, to have different information we can share with the decision makers on different fields, for example, the health sector, the business sector. So, and 14 co-authors, 60 reviewers, 22 countries participated in, and the final result is published on the Home to Us All, and a summary of it is published on the Connecting publication. You can download it, but it's what I would like to share some of the findings of the results. There are really a growing body of evidence, and it was synthesized by Children and Nature, and some of the highlights. it shows that knowledge about nature is really important, but not enough. If we want to have people to take actions, benefit to the environment, the connection is vital. Many indigenous and spiritual traditions embrace the concept that humans are not separate from the rest of nature. All is one. But many of us forgot it. The two factors, the connectedness is very important. If you touch and feel and have positive experience in the nature, that really helps to contribute most children developing into adults to take action and benefit from the environment. The contribution, the commitment to many hours, and the childhood's positive direct experience, it's important, but if it is with a role model, if it is a parent or a little bit more adult young person, a teacher or somebody we trust, somebody we love, it really imprints and leads to take action to the environment. And the commitment, if we to spend many hours outdoors, is keenly remembered wide or semi-wide places and mentoring adults who taught respect for nature, said one of the researchers. These findings are now based on diverse samples of people, not only from Europe, it's all over the world. And it really tells that the early childhood experience and having a role model together helps us to create our pro-environment behavior too. And of course, we know the health benefits of nature. We are happier, healthier, more active, more creative if we are in nature. But it's not enough if many of us know, but the research really underlines that it's evidence. And we can use it. The positive and meaningful connection to nature can facilitate it and enhance to our life. And our health is better because it reduces obesity, reduced levels of depression, anxiety, reduced incidence of cardiovascular diseases, improve birth outcomes, improve attention, productivity. In the school, their performance in school is higher if they are connected in nature, if they are connected even in the school garden. So these evidences, you can use this research finding, you can find it, and you can use to articulate if it needed for any decision making, fundraising, and we use it for our works as well. And we know that the evidence shows it's true, but still there is a global trend that people, including children, face more and more barriers experiencing and connecting with the natural world. And we would like to ask you to share in the chat box. And Gronya, please share the other word cloud.
I will.
A link.
Okay, so this is the new one. I'm just embedding it again into the chat. So if you go to that link, and again, you can share with us three words that relate to this question, and we'll gather a word cloud. And again, I'll be able to download the results, and we can have a look at it later on in the presentation.
So, just to be clear, everyone, this one is on the word cloud again.
Yeah.
Three reasons we are disconnected from nature. More disconnected.
More disconnected, yeah.
Sean, it's about the discovery zone.
Yes, I'm just, I'm typing my 3. like to participate. Okay. Okay, everyone. So Katalin gave you a great overview of the literature and the study. As practitioners, however, it's probably not a big surprise. If we look through the stories, and I hope you've looked at some of them, of the listed on the chat box, you will see exactly the sort of things that the study makes clear. At least 3 or 4 of you in your stories reference having a parental figure with you, an authority figure with you, a teacher, a parent, a grandparent. Almost all of you, many of you cited that. It turns out that repeated experience in nature with someone you love and trust is really powerful. Turns out grandparents are particularly powerful, even more than parents. So those of you that are heading into grandparenthood, you have a huge opportunity to get out there, take your grandchildren out into nature. One of my favorite Nature for All partners is an NGO out of Colombia called Outdoor Grannies. And the Outdoor Grannies train themselves on environment and then take their grandkids out and help them share and learn on a regular, consistent basis. The grannies train each other on how to do nature identification, nature walks. The kids just think they're hanging out with their grandparents. And this is the sort of thing that's scalable and accessible in other regions around the world. Many of you have small animals, actual wildlife in those stories. And that presence is critical. A lot of you had place. And I love that this issue of place come up, given the whole theme of this conference and the celebration of this conference of the power of your local place. Lying on the ground near home, looking up at the sky, doing it in your kitchen with your parents. It turns out that place is critical. If you connect to wetlands when you're young, you will always be attracted to that wetland, but you will have an affinity and appreciation for all wetlands, for the sea, for the ocean, for prairies, for sky. All of these things are ingrained in us at a young age. A lot of these stories have wild in them. And it's a really hard one. In fact, you in Europe do way better than many of us around the world of still celebrating wild and allowing parks to be wild and educational playgrounds to be wild. Because in wild, there is wonder. And in wonder, there is love. And so for us, these come through your story. They also come through the data and the research. We have this website up in 3 languages. English, Spanish, French. We would love to do more languages, and we try as much as we can. Next slide. But we all are doing this virtually because of this crazy little thing called COVID-19. And when COVID-19 hit us, I love it. We have an Outdoor Granny Appreciation Club happening, and let's have a spawning of new Outdoor Granny. Make a friend.
Yes, I'm following and out my grandchildren. Yeah.
We'll share a link later so you can go and see their work. They've just produced a lovely little 2-minute video that shares their insights, and we'll ask the organizers to share it later with all of you. So we realized in COVID that there was a real problem. People couldn't go outside in many places. And so the opportunities of getting connected to nature were less. But also there was a whole movement of homeschooling, home teaching happening, and parents were struggling. How am I going to teach my kids about nature when I don't know anything? But there was also a factor of kids being frustrated and bored. And where did they find things to entertain themselves that weren't just another video game, just another 4 hours on Netflix? So we came up with this idea of the Discovery Zone. And the Discovery Zone is very simple. It's populated by you with the resources in that the outdoor, well, around the world, many people have classes, materials, curriculum, comic books, exercises, play games, films, videos that they know can be used as the basis for engagement with nature. We thought, what would it be like if you could collect all of these from around the world? And you could go to one place and in 100 different languages from 100 different countries, find examples of resources. And so if you go on the Discovery Zone now, you can find hundreds of different assets, each of them codified, each of them tagged by, is it a comic book in Portuguese that talks about climate change? If you have those three conditions, you could click it in and you would find that asset. We want you to share your assets because you're frontline practitioners, you know this. It's a wonderful way to amplify the community and share the voice. But then we realized it's not enough just to share assets. We believe that conversation is the basis of behavior change. It's not the content you create, it's the conversations provoked by that content that allows social norms and behaviors to shift. So we created a matching site to the Discovery Zone, which is an online sharing site. You can book an hour on here and you can talk about flying ants and what to do with flying ants as an exploratory tool with kids. You can talk about outdoor grannies. So you can hold your sessions on here. Again, they're codified, shared, captured for posterity. So instead of these wonderful one-off sessions we're finding around the world, there is a whole set of resources. We would love our dear friends at the Trust to consider adding these sessions to the Discovery Zone after, because they're another way to amplify and share. We believe that in empowering the community, so if you put resources up in this section, it doesn't mean you put the resources up, it means you link to your website. So it feeds back to you. We never want to steal traffic from our partners, we want to push the traffic back. One of the beautiful things about Nature for All is it's not an NGO. It doesn't have an owner, it does not have a big budget, it runs for the constituency, by the members, for the members. So that's a little bit more about the Discovery Zone. Click on natureforall.global, go play for it, play in it. We're very excited. Katalin has been a real champion and we're adding a German page at the moment. We're talking to our friends in Japan and China about other language pages so you could begin to have sub-pages around language constituents, and mobilizing resources for a specific region, language, or constituency is a lovely way to go. Next slide.
Then this is a good promotion for a project I was involved in. We uploaded this project to the Discovery Zone as well, and because of uploading, the German organization, the Bavarian Academy of Nature Conservation, decided to have a German site and supported the Discovery Zone. But let me tell a story. So falling in love with nature, it's not always easy. You can't get kids outside. We had to find some other ways. And as a CEC European leader that time, I was invited by this organization, the Bavarian Academy of Nature Conservation, and they really wanted to introduce an amazing material they developed. It's called Tear Alive, and it's a very well-developed, structured module system to help children to meet living animals in the classroom, to have activities in the classroom, and to build emotions. And based on these emotions, the academic could bring them forward to discuss about the place where these animals live when they are in the wild, or their relatives in their ecosystem. And they could talk about the ecosystem, they could talk about the conservation. So this And we discovered that the kids who are really attached to their mobile phone and so difficult to get their attention away from the screen, when a butterfly, when a worm or a butterfly or any other animals comes close to you, it grabs their attention. They follow it and they want to have some connection. And the whole education program was built around using living animals, of course, to have the conservation behavior at the end, but just start to love these animals, take care about them. So the whole concept behind was to learn with the living animals, connection with nature, with love. And when you love it, you will pay attention, you will have awareness about it. You can build the knowledge for this emotional track. And what we realized that this knowledge and attention and love is not enough to connect it with their consuming behavior or their lifestyle, or even to connect it in their mind, the way they live, how it connected to that beautiful animals they love. And we realized that the games are the clips. So we developed systemic games or different games to connect in a very playful way, that if I buy this stuff today, how it affects the home of a hedgehog in my nearby forest. And it worked really well. The results I can share, I just picked up two, but I really love them. There was a young guy who was really badly behaved in the school. You know, the long, tall guy in the first row, crossing arm, crossing leg, doesn't pay any attention, waiting to the end of the lectures. And in the classroom, they build ant farms. Very easy, 1 hour activity. You can bring it and you can watch it for a certain period before you release those animals, those ants. And he was stick to. I had another picture, I just didn't find it. He put the little ant to his arm and was watching for an hour and started to study biology, because he wanted to be the ant expert. And the teacher said, it's not enough, you have to learn other subjects to be able to be a researcher. So he started to behave differently. She started to enjoy the classes just because of that 2 millimeter tall animal on his arm. And another guy said that I will never kick an anthill again. I love that. And the other one, that we built the earthworm, the compost, a little compost in the classroom, just to show how the earthworm helps to prepare the soil, because the soil is important. Without them, we can't eat. It's a basic of our soil, and it's an ugly animal. Some of the people find it disgusting. Some of them doesn't like it. But if you see that kids, they loved it, because there were several activities to make this little worm known and loved. And they built this little compost. And one of the guys, and they were thinking how to release them, because of course we take care about the well-being of the animals. They took care about the well-being of the animals in the classrooms. And one of the little kids said, I take them home. I will introduce them to balcony, and it will be their home. I will make the compost at home. And he started to convince their parents. And these experiences, these quotes from the teachers and from the kids, really encouraging. And I just wanted to share with you. Probably you have other stories, so it's the next turn to continue with, I guess. Yeah, first a little bit about the youth engagement, and then your stories and the clouds. Sean, over to you.
Yeah, so one of the insights of the study is that young people are particularly are particularly open to falling in love with nature. Okay, so that there's a strategic opportunity when people are young. There's an openness, a willingness to fall in love. So we should be deeply committed to giving young people lots of opportunity in wild in nature. It does point out pretty clearly that that's not the only time you can fall in love with nature at any stage in your life. I mean, one of the stories we heard was from someone who fell in love with nature at a later age when they went to work in a national park and they discovered the wonders of the world. Again, these older experiences are critical. Another one of my favorite Nature for All stories is a Canadian story called Learn to Camp. Canadians I'm a Canadian, I'll declare my self-interest up front. But we are a very international place. We celebrate our diversity, we love our diversity, it's part of who we are. But we recognize that new immigrants coming to Canada often don't have the same comfort in nature and our beautiful parks that someone who grew up in Canada would have. You come from Sudan or Pakistan or Fiji, and you're asked to go camp in a place that has bears and mosquitoes, you're going to light a fire and live in a tent. It's a lot to get your head around. So there's a real barrier. We talked about barriers earlier, and we'll look at the SoundCloud in a minute. There's a lot of barriers there. So Canadian government, Parks Canada, said, well, we could break that barrier down. Let's create these learn to camp moments. And now they have these weekend overnight classes for new immigrants that can go and in a controlled urban environment, they set up a tent. They start a barbecue. They spray on bug repellent. They learn about bears. They cook marshmallows and the cultural food of their choice. They sleep overnight in a tent. And so that whole first experience of camping is made easy. And then they're given a free pass to go out and visit a national park. For me, these are beautiful examples that can be scaled. And so I took a moment to share it. But we've realized that IUCN, just like our whole constituency, can do more with youth, can celebrate youth more, and can empower youth more to have a powerful leadership role on environment. So we as CEC have created spearheaded something around our World Conservation Congress, which will happen, everyone willing, in January in Marseille. Usually brings together 12 or 13,000 environmentalists from around the world. It's the biggest coming together of environmentalists we have. We've set up a whole track conference for youth. And for IUCN, youth is defined as under 35. So it's a really big envelope. I mean, but if you know someone under 35, if you work with someone under 35 who you think might like to be engaged on an online discussion, an online sharing of young people of what are our problems, how can we fix them, what resources do we need, what can we do together, we put that in place, and we're really excited that it can hopefully help galvanize IUCN as the world's biggest environmental network to realize and position youth appropriately in the environmental movement. We think there's a lot of talk about youth engagement, but we question the validity in many organizations. So we're really trying to move the dial, turn up the volume in a meaningful way for youth. Write to Katalin and I, and we'll connect you to the right people. They are younger than Katalin and I, the two running that. So we can be spokespersons, but we're not the leaders of it. We wanted you to be aware of it because it will launch in September. We expect tens of thousands of youth to be involved. It's a great way for people in Ireland or the UK or Germany to meet with kids in Fiji or Peru. Thank you. Now we're going to move over to questions. So I remind you, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box, or just we'll turn over to hearing from you. Now, can we put up the first word cloud? Is that possible? The word cloud of what you feel in nature.
Yep, I'm going to put that up now.
Thank you. Oh, I'm full screen.
You are. Okay, so I'm going to.
I stopped sharing, so then.
So what does nature being in nature mean to you? Can you see that on my screen?
Not yet.
No.
Let me try.
No, it's your. You have to choose the file.
I think we got the wrong part of your screen.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, peace.
jumps out number one. Love that.
I love it.
We had world peace. All we need to do is get everyone out in nature. Calm, freedom, happiness, wonder, space, mindfulness, soil, living, clarity, belonging. Giddy. Oh, yay. I'm going to open up the floor. If anyone wants to unmute themselves, does this make you want to share anything? We want to hear more voices than just the 4 people who've spoken so far. Just jump right in. Okay. Can I get a volunteer to share their love?
Oh, David Eager would like. Could you unmute him?
We have to unmute? Okay.
Just
yes, please.
I've lost the screen. I can see Sean in a pop out, but I can't see. I've lost the rest of the screen.
You should be able to go Command Tab and it jumps back. Should.
Is it shared? Still shared your screen? Grania?
No, I've unshared it, but we can hear and see you, David. So you can speak away.
Right. Well, I need. Remind me again what I'm saying. What do you want me to talk about?
Share your love story, please, David, and why you put up that lovely creature in the backyard.
Yeah, okay, be a bit more specific. Sorry, there was a particular question. I got distracted because of the technical problem. Say again. I want to answer your question directly.
You're asking a few people to share their when I fell in love story.
Oh, you're asking me to do that. Okay.
Or
well,
reflect on the word cloud, because there were actually officially 2 questions.
Sorry, what was the second question?
Reflect on the word cloud.
Oh, the word cloud. Yeah, okay, the word cloud. Well, I put up. Sorry, are you expecting me to look at all the other words that have been put up, because I can't see them now? I remember a few of them, but I mean, a lot of them were to do with reactions, weren't they, to nature? Mine was slightly different because they were more specific. So I put up the word. You asked for individual words. I put up blue. Green, I think. Sorry, the colors mixed up. Green and soil. Okay, I could have said brown, but it's soil, obviously. And then sky. It can be forgotten, but you mentioned sky. I think somebody did.
Is there?
Okay, that right. Well, I'm sure that there must be great similarities between people's reactions to nature. It's a really, there's been a lot of, I think there's been a lot of research now into the mental health and physical health benefits of being associated with nature, and I do understand from bits of reading and so on the issue that you're talking about here of trying to engage people. And just quickly, I would say that I'm long retired now, but my career was in the public sector in Britain, in England and Wales, in what we call countryside planning. So it was to do with public access to landscape, to countryside, and recreation there. So it's a bang on this. And tonight, just before coming onto this session, I was finishing, it just happens, replying to my member of parliament, who'd written back to me about some environmental issues. So I bounced back, keep the boomerang flying in a friendly way. And the issue that I took up in my email, which I think I possibly still got to send off, but anyway, there we are, nearly finished. It was about it relates very much to this current COVID, post-COVID, whenever we get to post-COVID situation of people and nature, and it specifically was addressing the naturalization, the creating of more habitats in urban areas, in areas which mainly, for the most part, will be open, what we call open spaces, many of which will largely be large areas of grassland. Some of which, of course, you do need, obviously, and so I was suggesting some technical points about how that might be done for Britain, anyway. And it really needs organising, and good guidance needs to be put out to the local authorities who need to be engaged to do this. Otherwise, it'll be bits and pieces all over the place, and a certain amount of bad practice will go on. So that's that. I mean, have I said enough? Oh, I haven't. As for a kid, yes, I think 2 or 3 people said, no, I didn't look at, couldn't read them all, were 7 years old. This is a magic age. I was certainly 7, and that's when I connected with nature. I better leave it there. Thank you very much.
Those are excellent, David. Katalin?
I would like to hear some of the grannies or the grandchildren about their enjoyment in the nature. If you would like to, I don't know who would like to share the story by words. Please raise your hand to see if.
Can we unping me? I seem huge.
Liz, are you raising your hand?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I had a granny who introduced me to nature, and I still remember being up looking at plants with her, and just looking at what they do, and not really having to learn the names. Some I learned the names, and now today I was with my grandson who's 17 months old. I'm here babysitting for him tonight, and we went to my friend and we tasted all the vegetables and opened pea pods, and we looked at the pigs, and we were with the hens, and I really feel that connecting with somebody. I also work in primary schools as an artist and a forest school leader, and I think being the catalyst to what I love. I was the one who put up rock pooling, and Sean wanted to know what it was. So the west of Ireland, you stand over a rock pool and you move the seaweed gently, and you watch what's happening, and you look at what happens with the sea anemones. And I suppose I see myself as a catalyst for that, for not just my grandchild. He represents the next generation.
Thank you. It's amazing.
There's a few powerful things I want to tie there. One of the questions is, why do we always think that you only have nature far away? You have to go to Kenya on safari to see a lion to have a transformational experience. All the evidence, all of your stories, the thousands of stories we've heard, that is not true. One of my favorite Nature for All stories was a die-hard committed environmentalist from Korea who saw a green plant pushing up through the urban tension and concrete in his city. And it was that strength of a plant breaking through concrete that made him an environmentalist. He spent the rest of his life making parks in urban environments for kids to feel nature. And there's a whole movement to have urban parks, urban landscapes, parks within a certain jurisdiction. So I do think one of the things we can all do is push for it ourselves, advocate for it in our schools, and get our local governments to continue to let nature be close to us. Because it's in fact that close nature that's more likely to be transformational than a single trip to Kenya, which most people can't afford or ever do.
We got that question, that how do we, to what extent is the local dimension important to intimacy of the connection with nature? So it's, I was thinking that Hungary is small enough. So even if we go to the different parts of the country for that nature camp, it's in the 200 kilometers square you can be in. But even because of that, we were introducing, when we were asking the government to support and working with the schools to organize this kind of a forest schools to get children out for the nature, our support was to the nearby places. It's not further than 20 kilometers away, because we were convinced, I personally convinced, that if you don't value where you live, what you find there, with this little piece of grass out of the concrete, or a tree nearby the village, or a park, or a suburban area in the city, you won't feel home enough. Maybe yes, but usually I don't think so. So you have to know, and many people in villages take it granted that there are green around them, so they are connected with nature. And when you talk to people, they never been out in the little forest nearby. They don't know what type of plants or animals. I'm not thinking about the scientific name, just to recognize that they are similar or they are familiar and what they are good for, or you can pick them or not, you can touch them, or how to smell it, if you cook with them. This knowledge is disappearing. And so this is what we would like to bring back, to feel attached to your place, to to live in your place, to value it. Because if you don't value, you don't care if they cut a tree, you don't know what a tree costs, you don't know what a tree means, you don't know what a forest means, you just use it. So to value it and to care for it, to work for it, and to live a life that let the nature serve us and survive nearby, it's very important to use this local dimension. I'm completely convinced. 14 years of kids can be sorry for the polar bears, but what about the hedgehog? What about the blackbird? What about the tits in the garden? And I think it's very important for being touched the local issues. So thank you for that question. I completely pro for it.
I love this question about money. We should have much more questions about money. And
okay.
the insight in the question is, how come so many groups compete for the limited resources of our community across different segments? I want my money for penguins. I want your money for pangolins. I want your money for climate. And as a communicator, it's something that we put a lot of thought into, and really believe that the movement would be strengthened overall if we weren't perceived as pushing for our issue is always first and center, front and center. Because what it does in the audience is confuses them. What's more important, pangolins or polar bears? And if you confused audience doesn't react, over time they lose trust in all of the messages. So a lot of what Nature for All is to create a non-competitive environment where we encourage this connection to nature without having to fight for resources. And it's also part of that is aligning the messages. The climate change movement has been very successful in this. The 2 degrees, the 1.5 to stay alive, the existential crisis dimension. The narrative is relatively succinct and the behaviors are relatively clear. We in the biodiversity nature field have it a lot harder because we have such diversity, such complexity, ecosystem species. The species are hugely variable, a million are at risk. It's very chaotic. That's partly why I think Nature for All is interesting, because it's going back a step further. It's not talking about one species, one landscape, one country. It's talking about how you feel about nature at a more granular and personal level.
Okay, I love the other question. We have it that, okay, what was it? How to talk to the farmers and fishermen and foresters, and rightly or wrongly, and how to work with them, and to be more pragmatic, because we are too romanticizing the connection with nature. But I think for children, I do romance. I really try to build that love momentum. But when I'm working with farmers or others, I have a very, very nice story from Spain that nature conservation guy was so upset, or the whole nature conservation authority was very upset because of the habit of the hunters, the overpopulated animals, and don't care anything, or eating the protected, eating the plants and the leaf sprouts in the protected area, so many things. So there were several conflicts, and they couldn't get with them. So what happened? That guy learned to hunt, got a hunting license, and started to go to the same pub where the hunters go after the hunting, and started to talk to them and build trust. Had some drink together, of course, because it goes together. And after building that connection, after building that trust, he started to explain their opinion about nature, their opinion about conservancy, their opinion how it should be maintained, and started to work together with the hunters. Because without this connection, without this personal connection, they couldn't start the discussion. They felt each other as enemies, and they didn't listen to each other. And another story, in Hungary, we organized a workshop that it was also with the foresters, the hunters, and the conservation society. And what we started, there is a conflict always. And somebody says that there are not enough animals, somebody said there are too many animals. So, and you can't solve the conflict on the level when it works, when it exists. You have to go above or below. And we decided we go below. And we started to discuss about data. How do you collect your data? How do you validate your data? How do you know what is the carrying capacity of the place? How do you know if the animals are less or more? And on that level, they couldn't argue, because it was about collecting data, validating it, counting, etc. And when we cleared that, from that database, we could start to work on, okay, what is the conflict? Is it real or not? Which is the validated? How does it mean? Because it was out. There was about white boar, about 100 white boar, or I've seen only 2. This is not a data collection. So we have to go below, and then we can discuss. So when we are working in this kind of conflict, and you can imagine with IUCN we have a lot, we try to find the real cause and go below or above the conflict. The above means, let's talk about what kind of forest we would like to see in 20 years and what measure has to be taken to get that one. Not talking at you are wrong, I'm doing well, you are doing well, but start to build a vision together, and then come back and force in the steps we have to see. I don't know if it answered, but this is the way how I would handle the conflict between the conservationist who wants to have the wolf back, and the shepherds who doesn't want the wolf back. How do we handle it? And how do we start to discuss? First, learn each other opinion, and then understand each other opinion, and then try to go from their side and to show if there is another way to manage their business. I'm working in Bavaria. There is a huge conflict between the farmers and the conservationists. And this is also the way that start to discuss, start to learn each other, start to understand each other's point of view. Otherwise, we are just talking to the voice.
It's very interesting. In the Nature for All stories we hear, a lot of them have to do with hunting and fishing. My grandmother took me fishing. My grandfather took me hunting. And as environmentalists, sometimes it's a little jarring to hear those stories. But I think if you go back to core values, like Katalin is saying, you go back to look at one's connection to nature, which cuts across many communities. Even if we don't think we're connected, we often are. And it can be a building place for that work. We have 15 minutes left, and we want to look at the barriers and how we can overcome them. So can we put up the barrier meter? I've made a new word.
Sure.
Barrier meter.
I'm going to share it now through my screen. I'll leave it up for a few minutes, and then I will put the link, I'll embed the link into the chat for everybody. So
thank you.
Here it is shared. I just lose, I lose rights to kind of play around with the settings while I'm sharing screens. So that's
technology. Okay.
So it's so interesting. Let's take a second on this technology one. And I agree that it can be killer. I presume people mean the amount of time one spends on one's phone, the amount of time one spends in front of one's TV, as opposed to we have a better car, or I presume it's the competition for one's space. I'm a firm believer that technology is not by definition bad. It's its application that is often flawed. There are many different manifestations of good use of technology for the environment. I hear a huge number of stories who people fell in love with the environment watching Wild Kingdom 30 years ago, watching nature shows on Nat Geo. So there's a whole body of people who fell in love with nature through technology. I remember when Pokemon Go came out, and 100,000 people were out wandering in parks because they designed the game to require you to go out in nature with people. So that's an example of a game that was designed, as opposed to most games, designed to encourage you to go outside and meet people. And really, if we think of technology not as someone put it, not demonize it, but actually think strategically how to use it for good, we can shift that disconnect of technology from being such a big negative thing into potentially being a positive thing. I don't want to say it's not problematic, but I don't want us to throw it out entirely.
Yeah, I think the use of technology, not the technology itself.
I think an important one there that I would have thought would have come up bigger is the food and processed food, but food in general, that we've been disconnected from our food sources and thereby disconnected from nature somewhat.
It's a really big one. Our farm populations are minuscule. It's interesting if you listen to the Nature for All stories, and we had one in our chat, our small group here. Someone said, I grew up on a farm, so I was always connected to nature. We used to have 20 or 30% of the population that grew up connected to nature. Now it's 2 or 3%, with heavy technology, urbanized farming being the majority, which is less chance to be connected. We still find it in many indigenous peoples groups around the world, and they tend to be not align with this falling in love idea because they say we were always in love, and I think it's legitimate expression of continuous presence and action to nature. I want to just move us to look at this action and agency question though, because it's so exciting, and I want to thank Brendan for it. The question, I'm going to read it. What do Katalin and Sean think of? I've lost it. Can someone?
Think about the role of action agency in terms of encouraging stewardship. Is making the connection enough, or should we also aspire to get people to do simple acts to empower them further?
It's a lot easier to act yourself into a new way of thinking than it is to think yourself into a new way of acting. I'll say it again. It's a lot easier to act yourself into a new way of thinking than it is to think yourself into a new way of acting. You cannot tell people to be environmentalists. You can help them experience environment, fall in love, and they may become an environmentalist. So this idea of action is critical. That's why this very simple idea of take your grandchildren out can be transformative. But this word agency is very special. It's one of my favorite words in the world. Do you believe you have the ability to do this thing? And if we make it complicated, stopping the death of a million species, we don't have agency. If it's protecting the last lions in the world, we don't have agency. But if it's engaging people in nature, we suddenly regain agency. So I think something in this connectedness paradigm gives agency and provide agency and allows you to do that work locally. So I do believe it's a way to strengthen people's commitment through action in a meaningful way. Katalin, how would you expand?
I was thinking on another question, that how the workload would look like if you ask people who are not conservation, not nature people, nature person.
Well,
and yeah, I'm curious, but I don't know.
I have done
I can imagine that there was word that overprotecting parenting. Probably a person who is overprotect their child, they wouldn't recognize it's an overprotecting. They would say it's safety issue because they don't feel safe. They don't want to let them to go out. We had a seminar where we discussed with I don't remember, that outdoor classroom movement leader, Kat, and they conducted a research how much the people are playing freely or go outside in UK, and everybody was shocked, and they had it in other countries as well. I don't remember the numbers, but I was completely shocked. And they asked the parents and asked what is the cause of it, and one is that the parents want their children to learn, to have a good graduation, to go to the university, to earn more, to be in this royal system of, I'm sorry, probably it's not the best word in Hungary, we use it. It's the official system of the education from the top to the down, and your main performance is learning and performing in the school. And they didn't think that playing or the free play is a learning. And they want to structure the play of the real kids, even because our mind is wired differently, and we always want to find a cause or want to find some purpose in a play. Just playing to practice, playing to learn, playing to react, playing to connect, playing to plan together is not known. And they feel if they just let them kids out, there are so much danger. They are not safe. Somebody has to care about them, which probably sometimes is enough. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's not. You have to know where you are, and you have to know where you let your kids to be free or not. But at the other hand, is you need not to control every second on their life. And then when they are 20 years old, you tell them that you are not independent enough. But we organized every second in their life. So, and this is, I think, but if we ask that people, they would say they don't want, they waste their time for unuseful stuff, or they don't want to be outside because it's dangerous. Bugs and, I don't know, snakes or snails. So, ooh, I don't know, but this is one of the research finding as well.
So we're down to our final 8 minutes. We want to really ensure if you have any questions that you have a chance to ask them, or if you have anything you want to share, we can take you off mute if you have something you feel you really want to contribute. So over to you, the important participants.
I have a quick question. I have a quick question, Sean and Katalin. How important do you think other aspects of heritage are to looking after nature? Like, how important is it to know the history of a place and the culture of a place? And, you know, how do you bring that into the story?
Well, when you look at connectedness, depth matters. And depth is the layers we bring to something. So in the desk research, spirituality and religious connection really matters. If you feel a religious connection to a place, it's a great way to connect. Culture and heritage are similar. When you feel a cultural connection to grasslands, to grazing lands, to walking places. I live 10 minutes from Central Park in the middle of New York City. Every time I enter Central Park and get a little bit lost, I'm reminded that there's no reason big cities can't have depth, can't have nature, because it's right there. It just takes decision-making by local governments to maintain it. So I think your question's really important, and never underestimate the power of culture connection and spiritual connection.
And I just quickly, because I really would like this gentleman to say what he wanted to say, but first, we want to build a sustainable future. We want to build a future that is supporting us and our children and grandchildren. How can we plan a future without knowing anything about the past? How we know how this landscape was created or just is there for from a long time? And also, if you discover a place, sometimes you find strange names in a place which it looks like a desert, and there is a name like Blue Creek or something like that, that you have to know what happened in that place, how the place was evolved, and from that you probably can decide how to make it more healthy, how to maintain it, and how to build it, and how to plan it in the future. If you don't have roots, you won't have the crowns of the tree. So, and it's the same with the time. So if you don't know the history, it's more hard to plan a good future. That's it. And Mr. You raised your hand, Dar.
One of the fun things we're working on right now, since this issue has come up in the chat box, is a whole new nature culture initiative at IUCN to really more deeply and profoundly look at how this nature culture interface works, what difference it makes, how you can scale the impact of it in a positive way. So I do hope it and look forward to deeper insights over time on the nature culture interface, which of course spirituality is part of.
Mr. McAree you raised your hand previously?
Hello. Yeah, Dermot McAree. Good evening, everybody. And first of all, well done, Burren, Joe, and the speakers. I just have one simple input. You asked about a nature-based moment For me, it was my godfather planted an apple tree for me when he came back from America. I'd never seen him. He planted an apple tree for me when I was 10 years of age. And I looked at that tree forever. I had colic every September from eating the apples, but it gave me a moment about trees. And I looked at the tree in the seasons. I subsequently became a forester. And I think I'd like to make one suggestion about trying to get nature, the word of nature. I think in Ireland, we should get every child, every school child to plant a tree, to plant the right tree in the right place. Just plant one tree and let him or her look at that tree as they're growing up. I'm with an organization called Crown Trees for Ireland, and our objective is to try and get that message across. And there's not much psychology involved. It's very simple. Get out there and get a child in a school to plant a tree, and they can go back to that tree and look at it as the seasons unfold. So that's my tuppence halfpenny worth for this evening. I must congratulate the speakers, and again, Burren Bio, fantastic webinar, and well done.
Thank you. I love that.
Thank you.
All I would say is, let's say at least one tree.
Okay, well, for starters,
Yes.
let's start with one.
I love it. As I spent 6 years of my life tree planting, so you had me in.
Right.
Can we put up the last slide, Katalin?
Yes.
We want to make it easy for you to join the CEC or Nature for All, so we prepared a slide that includes the links and the websites that you can go to if you want to join. Both of these are free networks. There's no cost involved, etc. So please, if you feel any desire to stay involved with this type of work, we'd like to profoundly thank the organizers for such a lovely session and for managing it so well with us.
That's it.